wanted to thank Heather for connecting with me this summer, just because it has been a great collaboration, and I was very excited to hear about her and her collaboration with Marquette University, all the data they found about sleep in their students. And I really commend this school for really making an effort to make the mental, cognitive, emotional, and overall physical well-being a priority in their students. So as she said, I work at Children's Hospital. I am a pediatric pulmonologist and a sleep physician. I went to university school from grade 1 to 12. I asked Heather if we're still rivals, and it doesn't seem so. I thought this would be a boo-hiss moment, but I went there for 12 years, obviously, and then I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison for undergrad and medical school, and then I came all the way back home to do my training here in Milwaukee at the Medical College of Wisconsin. So I did pediatrics, peds palm, and then sleep. So I am very native to this city. Okay. So just to kind of talk about sleep, we need to know basic information about sleep. So I'll kind of touch on some, I guess, relevant physiology about sleep, just so you know where we're coming from. And then why is sleep important? What we do know, wow, so I don't have to yell as much. What we do know is what happens if you don't get enough sleep. And then if you do get some sleep, there could be some improvement in performance, be it academics or athletics. And then we'll kind of go into some techniques that can be implemented at home without seeing a sleep doctor to try to improve sleep overall. Okay, but to keep it light, because it could get kind of dry, how many hours of sleep do you think this animal needs? Got this from the zoo. Anyone? Very close, 20 hours. And my theory, and maybe other people's theory, is that they're predators. So, you know, he's like, I'm ready, I can sleep. No one will try to kill me while I'm sleeping. So he can sleep all day and then eat for whatever many hours he will eat during the day or during wakefulness. How about this guy? How many hours of sleep over a 24-hour period? 2. So maybe he's the prey of the previous animal, and sleep is kind of risky. This cute thing. (18 to 22 hours. And they're up in the tree, so they're somewhat safe from the predator, but they have a very limited, very restricted diet. They eat eucalyptus leaves, so they need minimal energy expenditure. So they can't really be doing a whole lot during the day. So they need to sleep and save their energy. How about this guy? 3 months. 3 months old. Very good. Got older. 3 years. About 11 to 13, so that's kind of a range. 8 years old. Very good. Not the same kid, but 16 years old. I know, some of them do. 9 hours. So I think this is kind of important to bring up, just because I know when I was in high school, I didn't know how much sleep I needed. All I knew is I needed to get my work done. And I definitely sacrificed sleep to get my work done. And that continued into college, into medical school. You know, honestly, when do you guys think I figured out how much sleep I needed? When I was a sleep fellow, yes. Oh, absolutely. I was just asking when do you think I realized how much sleep I needed? You're very close. Okay, yeah. I had a kid in fellowship. So when you don't get sleep, you really want it, and then you figure out how much you need. You sleep whenever you can. And honestly, after sleep fellowship, I realized why. And I actually did much better on tests. I did much better on boards. I was much more awake. Things stuck better. So I felt like I became a better mother, wife, and doctor. Okay, so the basics. There are 4 stages. There's stage 1, 2, 3, and REM. Stage 1 is the lightest stage of sleep. It's where you feel like you're kind of in that twilight. You might feel like you're in and out of sleep or that you don't even sleep, but if we put an EEG on you, you probably are sleeping. Stage 2 is what we consider true sleep, where you feel like you actually slept. Stage 3 is actually the deepest stage of sleep. So when you look at the EEG or the electroencephalogram, we look at the waves, they have slow waves. So we call it also slow wave sleep. This is the stage of sleep where if you wake up really groggy, you probably woke up from that stage of sleep, or if someone had too much to drink and they passed out, they're probably in that stage of sleep, and it's really hard to kind of wake them. And then rapid eye movement sleep is, it's a deeper stage of sleep, but the EEG looks very similar to wakefulness. So it's a very active form of sleep. There are rapid eye movements, there's a lot of dreaming that goes on. If we have young children or even babies, you might hear them breathe kind of funny during the stage of sleep. Eyes will flutter, so they could, even babies when they grimace or they're like looking like they're sucking on a pacifier, that's their REM sleep. Okay. So everyone will cycle through all stages of sleep. Oh, sure, absolutely.
What stage are you in when you're talking?
That's probably more non-REM 3 or stage 3, stage 2, stage 3. And it kind of goes into the whole sleep terrors, sleepwalking, bedwetting, and sleep talking, because they don't recall talking. So you kind of have to be in a deep sleep to be doing some nighttime rendezvous kind of stuff and talking and having conversations without recalling. So yeah, and I think I will touch on that. So yeah, everyone cycles through all stages of sleep. You go through these cycles every about 90 to 120 minutes. So arousals 4 to 6 times per night, that's not very uncommon. It's not abnormal. It gets abnormal when you wake up from these arousals and can't get back to sleep. So stage 3 is sort of my favorite stage of sleep, especially when I look at sleep studies, because the breathing is very regular, it's very deep, they're asleep, you know that, and we can adjust leads when they're sleeping like that. It occurs mostly in the first half of the night, and my mom always said, you need to sleep so you grow. And I was like, sure, you know, right, whatever. But it's true. During sleep fellowship, I realized or I learned that growth hormone is released during the stage of sleep. It's also good to know, and I'll show you another slide, kids have they'll have the highest percentage of slow wave sleep during their childhood years. As you get older, that slow wave sleep goes down significantly. In fact, I've seen sleep studies in 6-year-olds where there's 0% slow wave sleep. And so that's kind of probably why, as you get older, your sense of feeling like you don't get restorative sleep increases. So as we had talked about, sleep terrors, bedwetting, sleepwalking, sleep talking, confusional arousals where they wake up, they kind of respond to you, but they kind of don't, and they don't recall it in the morning. Those kinds of things happen during usually this stage of sleep. And then, as I mentioned, it's also a stage of restorative sleep. So when you are sick, you have more of it. When you exercise a lot, you have more of it because your body needs to recover from the damage or from the breakdown that happened during the day, from the exercise, from the illness. And then if you don't get enough sleep, if you stay up for 24 hours on call, you'll get more of this sleep the next night to make up for it. Okay. And then rapid eye movement sleep, that occurs more during the second half of the night. This is the stage of sleep where you have complex dreams, vivid dreams. You can dream in the other stages of sleep, but this is where it gets really kind of crazy. When you have that dream, you're like, what was that? That's usually during rapid eye movement sleep. It's also important for consolidation of memory and growth and development of the central nervous system. Again, I'll show you another slide where I have sleep through the ages. And babies from the newborn period until 6 months, they spend 50% of their total sleep time in rapid eye movement sleep. And that makes sense because they are growing, their nerves, their central nervous system is growing and developing significantly during that period of time. Okay, so this is the slide I've been talking about. So you can kind of go through it. It goes through what is recommended in terms of the total amount of sleep that they need over a 24-hour period. But just keep in mind, this is a guideline. There is definitely a bell curve for each age group. Like my son was always on the end, the lower end, and it drove me crazy because I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, you know, with my own child. So when he was getting like 9 hours of sleep at this time, you know, at 6, it drove me bonkers. But he was functioning, so I figured he's probably okay. Okay, so the information in red is pretty much just highlights of each age group. And I guess milestones. So sleeping through the night, huge milestone, right? 5 hours, I guess, is what they consider sleeping through the night. Tonsils and adenoids also grow during early elementary school, so they're at risk for obstructive sleep apnea. It's really interesting. So I have a child in this age group, and it's very true. I don't know if you all have anyone in that age group, but I feel that these kids are the most alert, almost annoyingly alert. Like they're ready to get up at 5:30, and weekends 5:30, and they go to bed at 10, so wake up at 5:30. You know, you're like, what am I going to do with you for 3 hours? And then this age group, where there's an increase in slow wave sleep, they have more sleep terrors, sleepwalking. They could still have bedwetting for sure, even though they're potty trained. Let me think if there's anything else. So adolescence, you know, everything, you know, just everything changes. They have a tendency to have an irregular sleep schedule. They have night owl tendencies, and there's a biological reason for that. They're at risk for mood disorders too, so that can definitely affect sleep. But the good news is sleep terror, sleepwalking, bedwetting generally improve because they have a significant decrease in that deep sleep by adolescence. Okay, so the true function of sleep is really not known. What we do know is from sleep deprivation studies. We know that it's important to limit your time awake so that you avoid excessive stimulation and you can process everything that you learned during the day. But that's pretty much kind of all we know, like what we truly know about sleep. So excessive daytime sleepiness, of course, if you don't get enough sleep, you'll be sleepy. However, you can have other signs, especially in the younger children, like the 6 to 12 years of age who are very alert. They can be hyperactive, they can be impulsive, they can have behavioral issues. Mood disorders. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be happy, or you might be very anxious about going to sleep. Behavioral problems, I already mentioned. There could be inattentiveness, there could be impulsivity, oppositional behavior. Your academic performance can go down, and sometimes the only sign is stress, family stress. If there's one kid in the family that's keeping everyone up, the family will be stressed. If there's one kid in the family who's very unhappy, appears to be very depressed, very anxious, that's going to affect the entire family. So sometimes the one sign that you see is that the family is just at their wits' end. Okay. So these are a couple of studies looking at the effects of sleep loss. The first study up here showed that adolescents who sleep less than 8 hours were more likely to suffer an injury. And that could be because of poor coordination or just generally being a little bit more clumsier because they're tired. The next study showed that longer sleepers had fewer illnesses. So sleep deprivation is thought to be, so lack of sleep is thought to be a pro-inflammatory state, and your immune system may not also be working very well. And so you may not be able to fight off the common cold as well. And there's also been shown some suboptimal responses to certain vaccines, like the seasonal influenza vaccine. This name is really important to look at because she's the one who, Mary Carskadon, is the one who kind of came up with the guidelines for how much sleep each age group needed. And in her study, she noticed that the total sleep time, if adolescents got less than 6 hours and 45 minutes of sleep, they tended to be more depressed. And then finally, same study, earlier bedtimes, longer regular sleep resulted in higher grades. So this first study looking at sleep and academics, this was a study done in South Korea, and they looked at kind of a smaller group of students in a larger study. And the study that they looked at was Sleep, Suicide, and Early Psychosis in Adolescents Research Study. They picked out about 50 adolescents who had what they considered insufficient sleep, and then 51 who did not have insufficient sleep. And I say who did not have insufficient sleep because that group still didn't get enough sleep. So they defined insufficient sleep as those who had less than or equal to 7 hours of sleep during the weekdays, those who had at least 3 hours of sleeping in on the weekends, and then were sleepy during the day. So all that criteria had to be met to be in the insufficient sleep group. And so what they noticed was academic performance in the insufficient sleep group was lower than in the non-insufficient sleep group. And academic stress was also higher. And if you look at that, so the 2 here means the second quartile. So based on their rank, there's the first quartile rank, second quartile rank, third, fourth. So they were more likely to be in the first quartile rank if they did not have insufficient sleep. Familiar stress was higher. Impulsivity was higher. And they were shorter. I don't know if that was just kind of I don't know, but interesting to me too. But then you look at the average amount of sleep in the insufficient sleep group was about 5.5 hours, 6.5 hours in the non-insufficient sleep, which is still not enough. So there's a scale called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, ESS, and if you score above 10, you're considered sleepy. This group was more sleepy. And that kind of goes into the criteria of fitting into that group anyway. So just to summarize, after all that data, compared to those who did not have insufficient sleep, those who did not sleep enough or really did not sleep enough had lower academic rank, increased academic stress, increased familiar stress, and increased depressive mood and impulsivity. They were also sleepier and shorter. And then finally, there was this other study in Singapore where they looked at the top high schools, and they enrolled pretty much teenagers, adolescents. They had 56 participants with an average age of 17 years. And so they had a group of what they called sleep restriction and a group where they called controls. And so what they did was they had kind of 3 parts to this study. The first part of the study was the baseline period where they let them sleep for 9 hours if they wanted for 2 nights. And then came the intervention period where they divided them. So the sleep restriction group was only allowed to sleep for 5 hours. And then the control group could sleep again for 9 hours. Followed by, I think, 3 nights of recovery sleep for 9 hours again. And so what they did was they did some cognitive testing at 10 a.m., 12 p.m., and 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. They also looked at their sleep studies several times during the study, and they had them wear that Actigraphy watch to look at their sleep-wake cycle throughout the study. And so what this shows is pretty much making sure that they did everything that they were supposed to do. So the sleep restriction group, on average, slept for about 4 to almost 5 hours each night during the intervention period, and the control group slept for about 7 to 8 hours. And I'm just going to move this over so I can look at this. The sleep restriction group had more problems with attention, memory, and executive function during the intervention period. So they are the red. So they had more lapses in attention. Their working memory went down. This is the intervention period. And this was also memory. And another thing just to note is that they never quite matched up with control even during the recovery. So even after two nights of recovery sleep, they still didn't quite make it back to normal. And then they also had poorer speed of processing, increased sleepiness, and decreased positive mood. And you'll see again, they didn't quite make it back to baseline or meet up with the controls during the recovery period. So to summarize, it seems that if you don't get enough sleep, if you're restricted, and they really restricted them, you'll have significantly affected cognitive performance, subjective sleepiness, and mood issues. And then recovery doesn't seem to help with sustained attention or subjective sleepiness. So again, it's almost like a negative. Like you kind of have to see what happens if you don't get enough sleep to see really how important sleep is for you. It's almost like when we take away a medication and then symptoms come back, you know that it kind of helped you. But that's how sleep has been studied in terms of the function of sleep. Okay, so if academics isn't enough to kind of get the buy-in from the students, I throw in this. So athletics, your performance in sports actually does improve when you extend sleep. There were studies that looked at the performance impairment when you sleep deprive, and 17 to 19 hours of sleep is equal to a blood alcohol level of 0.05, and then 28 hours is equivalent to not being able to drive. These two studies looked at college students. So the basketball players seem to improve in free throw accuracy, free throw percentage, and 3-point percentages when they increase their sleep by about 2 hours for 5 to 7 nights, or 5 to 7 weeks, excuse me. And then college tennis players, by increasing their sleep by 2 hours, increase their serve accuracy. So then what can we do to try to increase sleep in our children? It's really important to just acknowledge that there is a problem. So it's not just with the kids, it's with us too. Insufficient sleep is across the ages a problem. It's an epidemic, I would say. And it's very prevalent in our society just because there are things that are keeping us from sleeping, be it work, social media, electronics, job schedule. So if you can read up here that 75% of adolescents and 90% of adolescents in Korea do not get enough sleep. They did a survey of 130,000 adolescents in Korea, and 43% slept less than 6 hours per night. And then in 2006, the National Sleep Foundation did a poll, and they noticed that adolescents sleep on average about 7 hours per night. So if adolescents require 9 hours of sleep and they can't get to sleep, then they're not getting enough sleep. So there is a tendency to want to stay up later as an adolescent. And there is a biologic inherent tendency to do that. The reason why, let's see if I go into it. Okay, I'll talk about it in a little bit. So essentially, what I'll show here is that this is the 9-hour need of sleep. This is how much they actually get if they go to bed at 11, and then they accrue this sleep debt, which accumulates throughout the week, and then they try to catch up on the weekends. So I'm not sure how much you guys know about circadian rhythm, but circa dias means about a day. And so as adults in general, our circadian rhythm is about 24.2 hours, but the solar day is about 24 hours. And how do we entrain into that 24-hour day? We have social cues, we have environmental cues, we have coffee, so that gets you into that day. But adolescents, they actually get to about almost 25 hours. So they're not ready to go to sleep when we're ready to turn lights out. They're always going to be able to travel west better than traveling east. They want to stay up later. So it's important to keep that in mind when we try to work with them. So this is what we call delayed sleep phase. Those are the sleep symptoms that they have. It's a disorder if they cannot get to kind of a normal sleep schedule. And so they have symptoms of insomnia because they can't get to sleep, and then they can't wake up in the morning because they have to for school. This is more likely in our elderly, where they go to bed at like 5 or 6 p.m. and wake up at 3 in the morning. And we hope this is us. Okay. And then just, again, understanding the sleep need, understand when to worry. I forgot to mention that when a 6 to 12-year-old seems to be getting enough sleep, but is sleepy, it's a red flag for me if I see them in clinic. Because then either they're not getting enough sleep and they're just in their room, or they have a sleep disorder of hypersomnia, meaning like narcolepsy, or if they have sleep apnea, it's really bad and it's causing them to be sleepy, because usually they're hyper. Okay. So interventions, what can we do? It's really important to establish a routine. This goes for babies, this goes for younger children, this goes for teenagers, this goes for us as an adult. And some things you can think about is taking a shower, reading, relaxing, listening to soft music. And honestly, the wake time is set. You need to wake up at a certain time to get to work. You need to set a wake time to get to school. But what you can kind of play with is your bedtime. And so setting a bedtime and then making sure that it's enough to get that age-appropriate amount of sleep. And I'm sure you've heard of this, but turning all electronics off 1 hour before bedtime. And there's a reason for that if you don't already know. We all produce melatonin in our brain. There's a gland called the pineal gland, center of the brain, and it produces melatonin. When our eyes perceive light, and there's a certain wavelength of light, it's blue light, 450 nanometers. When those photoreceptors in the back of our eye see that light, it sends signals to this gland to say, stop making it. And so we're kind of playing with our inherent melatonin production and delaying sleep onset. So it's really important to try to do this. I know there are people out there that say, I can't fall asleep without the TV on and everything. And I'm like, if you're not having sleep problems, that's great. But if you're having sleep problems, give it a shot. Okay. And then, it's really easy to want to stay up late on the weekends socially. Stay up past midnight, sleepovers. I mean, it's reality. But just know that if you do that, you're going to kind of sabotage everything that happened during the week. If you were able to establish a good sleep schedule, Monday is going to be rough. If you stay up till 4 a.m. on Friday, Saturday night, you're going to sleep in probably on Sunday, unless you're willing to wake up at 6 in the morning after going to sleep at 4. And Sunday will be a little rough. So it's really important to try to avoid deviating too much from your school week sleep schedule. And so if you don't get enough sleep, if our teenagers don't get enough sleep, they're going to want to take a nap after school. And so it's really important to try not to do that. And if they have to, maybe just a power nap. But I know how hard it is to wake them up from that power nap. And I always stress to the families, it's almost like trying to save up money and then keep taking money out. You're never going to get that car. And if I see a teenager in my clinic and they have a very irregular sleep schedule, I ask them, what time did you wake up today? And they say, 10 a.m. because I had to get to this appointment, and they were really happy about it. But then I tell the parent, don't let him sleep today. I know he's going to want to take a nap because he just went to bed at 6. Don't let him sleep, and let's see what time he goes to bed that night. It's just really kind of building your sleep drive. The more time you spend awake, the more you're going to want to sleep. It's kind of like hunger too. All right, and then caffeine. Try not to take caffeine after lunch. Try not to take caffeine at all, if possible. And the reason why is we know it lingers in the body a lot longer than we think. Some people say 8 hours. In fact, we do a daytime nap study in our sleep lab where we check we check a urine to see if they have any substances in their body that can affect the validity of it, like stimulants or sleepy medications or medications that can induce sedation. We want it to be a valid test. And the most common thing we find in their urine is caffeine. And so we talk to the child, we're like, why did you drink coffee, or why did you drink that Pepsi that day? And they're like, I didn't drink anything. And the parent says, I swear I didn't give them anything for at least 24 hours. So it's still in the urine. Chances are it's still in the body doing its thing. So this is kind of a list of how much caffeine is in each of these little drinks that kids might want to consume. And it's a little surprising sometimes how much is in each. Exercise. This is kind of something I hold near and dear to my heart, just because I am actually conducting a study in my clinic in kids who don't sleep well, especially if they don't get to sleep, can't stay asleep, or both. And exercising has been shown to increase slow wave sleep, or that deep sleep. It's also been shown to help with getting to sleep. And I mean, I don't know, again, with your kids, if you have younger kids, if they run hard during the day, chances are they might sleep better that night. There are 3 hypotheses for why this works. And I'll spend a little bit more time on this just because I find this still very fascinating. It makes common sense, but it's still, it's such an easy thing to do that I kind of want to just prescribe it for everybody. So when your body temperature goes down at night, it's a trigger for sleep initiation. So when you have body temperature elevation due to exercise, this activates heat loss and sleep onset. And so we also know that this body temperature thing is defective in patients who can't sleep, like patients with insomnia, the elderly, and some who have mood disorders. Okay, and since exercise depletes energy stores, the thought is that if exercise induces sleep, sleep is important to restore those energy stores. So by depleting your energy stores, you're inducing sleep because sleep is needed to restore that. Kind of going into this. Sleep is important to help the body recover from the damage done during the day. Okay, so in general, the studies have shown that moderate to vigorous intensity exercise is probably the best. And some say for at least an hour. And in general, if you get enough of this vigorous intensity exercise, you'll get more deep sleep. So there's a controversy about when to do this exercise. 3 to 6 hours seems to be the sweet spot, but some people feel that even closer to bedtime helps them. So I actually have my subjects do it 3 to 6 hours to avoid that potential for revving them up right before bedtime. And then it's been shown that endurance kind of activity seems to be more helpful than power training. So this is Actigraphy. This is kind of what Heather and her group did, and this is what I'm doing in my study. So I have my participants wear a watch that detects activity, and it detects also your sleep-wake cycle by lack of activity. And so they wear it for about 2 weeks. And I tell them, just do your thing, don't do anything different. I mean, maybe try to improve your sleep hygiene, but that's about it. And then they come back after 2 weeks and they give them a new watch that they wear for 4 weeks, and I prescribe them exercise. So I tell them to do this DVD between 3 to 6 p.m. You might not like it, you might get sick of it, so here are some other options. And so I tell them this is how you know you're doing a vigorous activity. You can't be able to speak, you can't speak in full sentences, you can't have a conversation. That's how you know you're really working it, you're sweating. You might feel sore. And so they do this for those 4 weeks, and then they give me their watch, and then I download it. So this was one subject. The blue is sleep. You can see this black, that's all the activity. It's kind of like what your Fitbit's doing, detecting your activity. And then this yellow is light. I love calling them out. I'm like, you were doing something under those covers because you see the light at night. But so this yellow is light, black is activity, and blue is sleep. And you can see this is midnight, 6 a.m., 12 p.m. So this kid is going to sleep at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., midnight, all over the place, right? A regular sleep-wake cycle. And then it regulated once we got exercise in. And it was really exciting just to see this, because I can't manipulate this data at all. I just kind of download it and then go with it. So, granted, still going to bed at midnight, but not at 4 a.m., 11 p.m. here, 10 p.m. here, and still may not be a whole lot of sleep, 6 hours this night, but probably about 9 hours this night. You'll notice that Friday and Saturday might be a little longer in terms of their sleep, but it was just a little bit more regular. And it gives me hope that I can help these kids who say I can't get to sleep until 6 a.m. And this is another subject, again, all over the place, right? The blue. And then started exercising. Okay. Finally, I think this is finally, buy-in. It's really important for especially the older children to want to do something about their sleep. And so, maybe making it a lot of support from the family, making it a family effort, making sure there's not a lot of activity going on at night when everyone's supposed to be sleeping. That might help with making it work. Feedback, evaluating academic performance before and after, wearable devices that we have nowadays might be helpful. And then, of course, we need to make sure they don't have a sleep disorder that needs to be medically treated. And this is kind of where your doctors should hopefully help you identify that with your help of observation. Sleep apnea, kind of alluded to that with the tonsils and adenoids in certain age groups, mood disorders, insomnia, like true insomnia that can't be treated with some of these interventions I mentioned. When you're worried about them being too sleepy and there might be something more central causing the sleepiness. Restless Leg Syndrome. This is another sleep disorder that not a lot of people know about. They changed it to Willis-Ekbom disease because not only are the legs involved, but the arms can be involved, the trunk can be involved, and it's pretty much just a writhing, uncomfortable sensation in your body that affects your ability to fall asleep. And the only way to relieve it is to move, get up, maybe just exercise or something. And it's been associated, at least in kids, with iron deficiency. Okay, some random facts, just to kind of hopefully wake you up if you've been falling asleep. How many hours of sleep are you deprived of during the first year of life after having a newborn? Any idea? I know, I want to say 1,000. I feel like it because it keeps going, right? 300 to 400. So it's about, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks total you've been sleep deprived. Okay, this is kind of a no-brainer. Car accidents rise 10% after during the first week of daylight savings. Yes. What percentage of commercial pilots admit to having made a serious error while flying? Probably don't want to hear about this. Close, 20%. And then what percentage of train operators report having had a near miss due to sleepiness? 18%. So the point I'm trying to make is that, again, with the study that went on last year, it's really important to also keep in mind that this is a public health safety issue too, because some of our adolescents are out there driving and they're developing life skills, and they'll continue to develop these skills as they get older. And it's important for them to really value sleep so that they can protect themselves and others around them. sleep deprivation affects their ability to make decisions, affects our ability to kind of prevent bad decisions, behavioral inhibition, and also results in drowsy driving. In that poll that I mentioned by the National Sleep Foundation, they noted that over 50% of teenagers who could drive reported driving sleepy. And this other study down here showed that high school students who did not sleep enough became college students who did not sleep enough. And most used alcohol to fall asleep, stimulants to wake up, and 16% fell asleep while driving. So just to summarize, where am I now in time? Pretty close, that's good. Insufficient sleep is a major problem. It's all over, it's rampant in our society today. And we know that from our sleep deprivation studies, sleep restriction affects mood, academic performance, impulsivity, daytime alertness, and sleep extension may improve academic performance, athletic performance. We discussed some interventions to try to help improve sleep and perhaps sleep quality. We have to also identify sleep disorders to make sure that the sleep quality is not being affected by an underlying sleep disorder. And then just to kind of keep in mind that we need to keep everyone safe. And that's it. Yes, absolutely. Are there any questions? Yes.
How long does it take to readjust your sleep if you are a second shifter or a third shifter and then you normalize back to first shift?
I would say to really normalize and to feel good, maybe about a week. It's almost like maybe traveling time zones, perhaps. Some people can do it pretty quickly. I know some third shifters who try to get back to first shift during the weekend or the opposite. So what some people might do is sort of sleep deprive themselves for one day and then get to sleep at a normal time the next night. And then they can kind of hopefully, they still probably won't feel very good for several days, but I would say within a week if they're able to go back to that or get into that schedule for a good week, you should hopefully feel better and your circadian rhythm has adjusted appropriately. Yes?
Yes, I was just saying, when your daughter playing sports, prime example, her stepmother said, it's 11 o'clock, she got the light in the back. And I know, because I played sports, and sometimes I didn't get home until 8, and I ate, and I didn't get done with my homework until about 11. I say, well, Mary, she's doing her homework. Can't tell her to stop. And my point is being, she didn't get enough sleep because she did turn on the alarm. We discussed that, but did she really actually get enough sleep? Probably not.
Right.
But she got up on time. And I think, does she make up that sleep? Because you obviously, the way, if she's an athlete and she's got to study and whatever, she's going to bed at 11, 10 o'clock. And I think some of the parents can agree. Their kids don't go to bed at a normal 8, 9. It just don't happen. I did, because I played sports. So.
I know, there's reality, right? There's reality, and it's just, I think it's good just to know how much sleep you probably do need, and there's not much you can do with that kind of a schedule, especially if you want to be prepared for the next day. If you have a test the next day, you can't be like, well, I gotta sleep. You probably have to study, and so yeah, you'll try to probably make up for that sleep the next day. They might take a nap, but it's almost like, I guess then we shouldn't be terribly surprised about the irregularity, but ultimately we hope that we can learn some skills to try to figure out how to get that sleep. Maybe in the off season, if they're not in sports during a certain season, I would hope. I know there are year-long athletes too. I mean, I remember going to Racine Prairie for a tennis meet, and I was waiting for the last team or the last doubles team to play when I was at U School, and I needed to do my work. And the coach was like, come over here, you need to cheer on your team. I'm like, I need to get my homework done because I'm gonna be up all night. I have this project to do, and I'd be waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. mad because I fell asleep and also because I drooled on my project. It's just like, you're never really gonna be, it's a tough thing to manage, but I think if we all know how much we need to get, if the students know how much sleep we need to get, then hopefully we can all figure it out for ourselves, even in college. In college there's a lot more flexibility to get the sleep that you need. Yes?
What about the concept that you can almost like train your body to get by 5 or 6 hours sleep when your body uses that? Is there any
So there are what they call short sleepers, but they're very rare. It's almost like that rare disease. And some people can function, with or without caffeine. I've seen that happen. It's just that when you look down the line, there are some health repercussions too. I mean, we know that sleep deprivation, again, is a pro-inflammatory state, meaning like you're kind of at risk for more illness. You're at risk, cancer has been associated with it. So it's just, you can function. I'm sure people can function on limited amount of sleep. But when you kind of get down to testing, like how well you do function, there will probably be some deficits. And honestly, you especially at this age, you want your kids and you want yourself to be at your full potential. And so I think curtailing your sleep, yes, you can function, but I think you could probably function better. Yes?
other than the no electronics or whatnot an hour before bed? Is there anything else you might recommend for? I won't put my kids to bed when it's the ideal time. I'm like, I have to go to sleep for another hour or whatever. Or any other way of winding down?
I often joke around with my patients. I give them handouts about sleep. I'm like, read this. You'll get to sleep fast. But anything monotonous, try to do something pretty repetitive, monotonous, Sudoku, as long as they don't get into that too much. Or like a warm shower can kind of get them, hopefully, some people said they get revved up a little bit, but once your body kind of cools down, you should get a little bit more tired. I don't know if you guys feel this, but like in the summer when you've been out in the sun, you're a lot more tired, and that's probably that cooling down period. So something like a warm something might help at night. I think we talked about the exercise that might help. I think what parents have done. Yeah, it's just hard. We try to take away those electronics. Sometimes that does get them focused. I see that too. But at the same time, I wonder if there's something else, just because I know that light does have an effect on the brain. So I guess I barely answered your question. But some things like, again, warm bath, warm intake of some sort, like hot cocoa, exercise earlier in the day, and then something more monotonous. Yes?
Do you recommend melatonin?
So we do use melatonin in different ways. So in the toddlers, we even use it. It's to help with behavioral insomnia, where the toddler has a lot of curtain calls, wants this story, wants that story, wants a drink of water, or can't get to sleep without mom or dad being there. So we use melatonin almost like what I call to take the edge off, to take the pain away from this process. And so it makes them a little bit more drowsy, so that once you get them into their crib or get them into their bed, you can kind of tell them it's time to go to bed and go to sleep. Chances are you'll be a little bit more successful with that. We also use it in older kids who might have more of that delayed sleep phase. And depending on how it works, because not everyone responds the same way, we'll use very low doses, like 0.5 to 1 milligram, and I say take it at 6 p.m. And my goal is not for them to fall asleep at 6:30. It's just to see if I can get their 2 a.m. sleep time back to maybe midnight or 11 p.m. So it kind of shifts them, sort of like how some people might use melatonin for jet lag. And it's been shown to maybe help a little bit more at physiologic doses. And then there are some kids who just need something to help them get to sleep for other reasons, be it anxiety about sleep or just general insomnia. We use it kind of like a supplement to the melatonin that they're already producing. Yes?
I have a few questions, so I'll put them all out there. You can answer maybe all at once.
Okay.
Do you test neurotransmitter levels, like cortisol and stress hormones and all that?
Not our sleep clinic. I know, I think neurology has done that at Children's Hospital for different reasons, but usually not just for sleep. You know.
And what about adrenal support? Do you look at what's going on with the adrenal glands and how they relate to sleep?
The adrenal. Sure. So she asked about the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands are important for cortisol. And steroids and cortisol has been associated with perhaps poorer sleep. So, not in kids. We haven't really looked at that too much. We do look at the circadian rhythm, but I think it's mostly, I know that cortisol is supposed to go down at night, and so you might look at those levels. But it's always associated with research from what I've seen.
And what about using things like different herbs like ashwagandha, which is adaptogen, or valerian?
Valerian root. So we're looking at more natural, I guess, ways to get to sleep. Because there isn't a lot of, I guess, standardized studies looking at them, I don't even really know how much to say to take. When parents come in and say this helped us, I kind of bless it, and I'm like, well, that's great to know. And when other people mention it, I'm like, I've heard that's helpful, but I don't really know how much a child this big or a child this big should take. So I don't really recommend it off the bat. Is there anything else? Okay. Yes?
What about other kinds of light other than electronic? I've heard some people say you should have blackout curtains, and I wonder, is it better to sense the sun going down, sense the sun coming up in the morning?
So,
is it better to have that kind of intense darkness?
Yeah, at night for sure. I actually heard on the radio, I was interested in this, where they said you should wear sunglasses at night, like right before going to bed several hours, just to kind of start your brain from thinking that it's nighttime, so your melatonin starts producing. So nighttime for sure, you kind of don't want, especially in the summer when it's still bright out and you want your kid to go to sleep, you want those blackout curtains. But in the morning, light everywhere. It's really important. Light is the strongest, what they call Zeitgeber, which is the light giver, and that's what really sets your rhythm. Melatonin's kind of second place, but light is really what you need. And so some people recommend light boxes in the morning for people who have these phase shift in their sleep cycle, but those are expensive, so not everyone can have them. And looking at light is not very pleasant. Some people get headaches. So yeah, light in the morning, darkness at night. You'll be set. Yes?
Is there a better cycle to wake up in? One of your stages?
Oh, yeah. I would say not stage 3, not the deep sleep, because you probably will feel really groggy. And again, it's not as likely just because that stage 3 is usually in the first half of the night, as I had mentioned. We really can't predict what stage of sleep that we'll get into. But if you have been sleeping a good amount of time, chances are you will not wake up out of deep sleep. If that makes sense. If you take a nap, though, after being sleep deprived, chances are you will wake up out of deep sleep and not want to wake up. Yes?
What do you think about this pediatric recommendation
This is very interesting. We were just talking about this. So I was lucky enough to go to school where school started at 8:15 across the board, grade, nursery school to 12th grade. So I didn't really have to worry about it. But my son goes to a school district where he starts at 9 a.m. and he wakes up at 5:30. Okay, I'm like, what am I gonna do with you for 3 hours? And so school starts at 9 for him, and then the high school starts at 7:20. So what do I think about it? I think it does go against their inherent biological sleep rhythm. And so that kind of results, as one of the slides alluded to, chronic sleep deprivation. So it's kind of interesting that you brought that up, because I had it in my slides just in case someone brought it up. So traditionally, high schools start earlier. Minnesota is one of the school districts that has kind of started this trend. In 1997, they were able to get high schools to delay their school start time by 1 hour. And this resulted in all of these benefits: more sleep, increased attendance, decreased tardiness, daytime alertness improved, behavior improved, and there was a trend towards better academic performance. And then middle schools, they compared two of them. One started at 7:15, the other at 8:37. And the school that started later, the kids got 1 more hour of sleep, they were less tardy, and they did get better grades. And finally, a Kentucky school district delayed middle school and high school start times by 1 hour. And what they noticed was that motor vehicle crashes involving drivers ages 17 to 18 went down. So, it's easier said than done. There are a lot of things that go into it. Parent input, transportation. I actually got an email from somebody who is on a committee trying to work on this project. And I mentioned, oh yeah, elementary school earlier, middle school later, high school later, makes sense, right? But then she brought up the point, I was like, well, my middle school student goes to school at 7:20, has to get on the bus at 6:30. So like, imagine putting your kindergartner on the bus when it's dark out. It's just kind of an uneasy feeling. So that's one thing. Having, like, what kid would be better at home alone? So if, do you want your teenager at home alone if you have to take off for work and they just figure out how to get to school at 8:30? After school activities, will that be affected? Traffic congestion. So it's a big discussion, but physiologically it makes sense. It's just practically, what can we do to make it work? I don't know. But great question. It's still up there.
Well, thank you again.
Sure, thank you.